Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. The plan is we are going to be done within the hour, so we'll let everybody jump off. If you have any questions, do pop them in the chat box as we go through, sorry, the Q&A box as we go through the session, because I'd much rather kind of pick them up and throw them into my esteemed guests as we go through the session rather than kind of trying to cram it all in at the end. So dive in as you see fit. So welcome, let's get underway. My name is Will Farnell. For those that don't know me, I'm a partner at what is now TC Farnell Clark, having merged with TC Group back in March, but I'm also a director and co-founder of App Advisory Plus. And I'm delighted today to be joined by Dan and Rowan from Karbon. And we're going to be taking you through the concept of kind of mastering every bit of your client lifecycle. So we're going to talk about kind of what the lifecycle is, but then think about how do we get the best out of each of those touch points we have with clients? How do we use technology? How do we use data to enhance the experiences that we deliver? So before we get into the full agenda and what we're covering, let's just let Dan and Rowan introduce themselves. So Rowan, you're first on the slide there. So do you want to just give a quick introduction?
Yeah, cheers, Will. Morning, everyone. I am one of our principal customer success managers at Karbon. Been working on onboarding clients to our software for around 3.5 years, and before that, I also worked with Will at App Advisory Plus, and before that, I was an accountant in practice as well.
And do you miss it? Do you miss being an accountant in practice at all, Rowan?
Now I prefer the software side.
And Dan.
Great to be here. Thanks, Will. Yeah, I'm Dan. I'm the sales manager here at Karbon in the UK. So I've been with the business for similar time to Rowan, 4 years, and my roles consisted of leading a team of consultants to work with firms that are exploring how to become more efficient practices and ultimately achieve goals that they have set for their businesses. So it's been a great 4 years so far, and we've got a lot of exciting parts of the product still coming out. So it's my role to consult with firms to see where their challenges might be facing, what they're looking to do in terms of improvement, and ultimately see if Karbon could be a solution to help along those tracks. So really happy to be here, and good morning all.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. And I mean, this is a really interesting topic for me. I did a LinkedIn post just for the weekend around the idea that I talk to so many accountants and bookkeepers who are not getting the most out of their technology. They're either still not using any kind of practice management solutions and using spreadsheets, or they've got a tool that they're paying for and they're just not leveraging the tool to get the value out that these tools should give us. We built our own practice management solution back in 2015, which was around the time I first saw Karbon, 10 years ago in a restaurant in London with Stuart McLeod. But we were on this journey in terms of building our own solution. And the reason we built our own solution is that we couldn't find anything that did the things that I felt we needed to do in terms of managing the way that we dealt with our clients. But nobody has that excuse anymore. It's like there wasn't the tools. There are the tools now. So it's encouraging firms to actually use it. And what we're going to cover off today, whether it's Karbon, whether it's something else, just thinking about each of the different components of the interactions you have with clients and where can we drive greater efficiency, greater automation, greater client experience. So that's ultimately what we're going to talk about in terms of the specifics around the agenda. We've kind of positioned this as thinking about your client life cycle. So the start point is, what do we mean by that? What is a client life cycle? What are the challenges with that? And why is it important that we view clients in terms of them going through a life cycle? Why should we kind of break it down into the different components? We're going to talk about tech, and what I love about working with Karbon is that they have a global customer base, and what they've always been really, really good at, and sorry guys, I'm kind of bigging up what you guys do from a content point of view here, is they regularly get data from their users, and they're able to build really valuable insights in terms of what's going on within the profession across the world. So we've got some data here that Rowan and Dan are going to share in terms of this idea of stack sprawl, and what we mean here is too many bits of technology that don't always talk to each other. So we're going to ask you to kind of complete a quick poll for us, then we're going to share some data for you in terms of how you compare to what's going on around the rest of the world, and I'm sure we'll pick up some of the challenges around that as we go through it. So once we've identified the life cycle, we've started to talk about what technology we have in place. We're going to kind of share what we think good looks like in terms of building a playbook. How do we connect the client life cycle to drive the maximum impact from that? All of this stuff is pointless if we don't measure. So what should we be looking at? What should we be measuring in the way that we run our businesses? And finally, we couldn't do a webinar right now in the profession without talking about AI. So what's AI going to do to enhance that client experience and drive better efficiency and effectiveness in what you do? So that's the plan. That's what we're going to talk about. Before we dive into that, Dan, I'm going to come to you just in case anybody doesn't know. Give us a little insight into who Karbon are, what you do, and it's like 10 years since I first saw the solution in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, as Will said, so we have been around for 11 years. So I think you probably were one of the first people to look at Carbon back in the day. We were founded by some senior execs from Zero and Intuit, and we are now the leading practice management solution globally. We help firms of all shapes and sizes, whether you're a sole practitioner or a top 10 firm, to ultimately streamline, communication, maximize visibility across your work, understand really what is going on in the nuts and bolts of your business. And so we do pride ourselves on being a very connected system, and we would see ourselves as probably the one of the most connected in terms of allowing your firm to bring in softwares best of breed that allow you to connect and bring data all together in one space. And obviously we'll talk today about the challenges where you may have disparate systems and the impact that's having on your teams. But Carbon being a collaborative workflow tool to help you to understand exactly where work is sitting at any one time, allowing you to get that full cycle from engaging your clients from the beginning process all the way through to onboarding, and then ultimately doing the work for your clients. If you're a business that tracks time or you do fixed fee work, Carbon can support you in billing your clients for that work as well. So you have that end-to-end engagements to payments solution, which will allow you to then really get an understanding about where things are working well in the business. And plus the reporting at the back of it will then allow you to understand where you need to improve process, ultimately helping your teams to work quicker and more efficiently, enable you to get more work done for your clients and improve that client experience every day.
Excellent. Thank you, Dan. So let's get into the meat of the topic here. I mean, when we think about client life cycle, what do we mean? Before I kind of come to you guys for your view on this, I think I always talk about client experience, and anybody that's heard me on these sessions before and read anything that I've written, I think everything that we do comes down to delivering world-class client experience. So if we focus on delivering the best possible client experiences we can, then we're going to be doing the right stuff. We're going to run profitable businesses and retain clients, win new ones, and so on. And if we think about what world-class client experience means and what client experience generally means, it's a sum total of every touch point you have with a client, from first contact to last contact. And the accountant in me hears the word sum, so that kind of suggests, well, the more we have, then the better the client experience is going to be. So how do we build really efficient touch points, regular touch points, valuable touch points into everything that we do with a client? So like that's the start point for me. Is client life cycle is that journey that every client we interact with goes on. But it also includes those people that may not make it to client, because we still have engagements and interactions with business owners, individuals that for whatever reason don't become clients, but are still part of that life cycle. It just means that it's a much shorter life cycle than we'd like in terms of a client coming on board and working with us for a number of years. And we have to think about client lifetime value. I mean, we're in a really fortunate world being accountants and bookkeepers, where if we keep doing the right things, clients come back and pay us every year. So we have a very long client life cycle, but we need to make sure we look at how do we extend it, how do we add extra value during the course of it. So I mean, that's my start point on this. I mean, Rowan, Dan, what's your take? And Rowan, I think perhaps you can talk us through this slide.
Yes, I think like the what you've explained is exactly what it is, and it's like universal for every accounting firm, no matter kind of what size you are. But depending on the circumstances you're in with your firm, you might be focusing more heavily on one area of the life cycle at certain points compared to others. But overall, you're going to need sort of tools that help you efficiently manage this at every stage, manage the risks that you've got, but also allowing you to like deliver the client experience that you were talking about. And if you don't have those things in place, it's going to be harder for you to like, get that renewal and attraction for new clients.
Yeah, and if we think about, I mean, we've got some words on the screen here. I mean, we start with we have to attract clients. That's about our messaging. That's about our communication. It's about capturing as we move into the engage bit, capturing inbound leads, having conversations, thinking about onboarding, the challenges with onboarding. It's hugely administrative. And then we get into the whole kind of key bit of ongoing delivery, and it kind of this presents it in a way that it's kind of consecutive but it's ongoing like that. Deliver an invoice. I mean, we're talking here about where tools support in this, but that delivery bit can be 10 years, 15 years, 20 years of ongoing delivery. There's going to be some feedback loops in this in terms of we've got to go back, we've got to re-engage, we've got to do all this stuff in an efficient way. And my first-hand experiences is we were really bad at that re-engagement process early on in building my firm. That meant we never put fees up because we didn't have systems that drove us to re-engage. We didn't have tools like Ignition that said, hey, you've got to re-engage your client this year and don't forget to have a conversation about fees. It was just people were paying us and we just let it drift. So this is a prime example of where we're missing opportunities to use technology to drive this process. And clearly the last point here, we don't want to offboard, we want to retain clients, but therefore it's that ongoing review of what we're doing. And Dan, anything to add on this in terms of what you see with firms that you're onboarding onto Karbon?
Yeah, I think it's very in line with what you're saying there. I mean, ultimately, firms are trying to understand where can they deliver more value for their clients, and those having those parts connected in one place will allow you to really identify, where are we doing things correctly? Where could we do things in a much more efficient way? And things like AI, which we'll talk about a bit later on. When you come to repricing your clients, if you don't have the data in terms of how long you've spent with one client versus another client, it might not give you enough data to understand whether you should be increasing costs or decreasing costs. So AI can really start to understand that data for you and benchmark where your prices maybe should increase or decrease. But ultimately, you're then serving the clients in the most appropriate way, but you're also then allowing your team to prioritize the best clients that you're working with and ultimately do more or do the right amount of work with the right clients, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it really is about getting that insight at every stage to understand, are my team doing the best they can be doing at every level, but also is that every interaction with the client at each stage also providing the team with what they need. It is very much that client experience is directly linked to the employee experience at the same time.
Yeah, and certainly what I saw in the early stages is that so much of this is kind of disjointed, and we lack visibility of what's going on. It's kind of easy if there's two or three of you sitting in a team, you've got complete visibility over everything. But as you scale, and I talk about it's really easy to grow an accounting firm, it's much harder to scale an accounting firm because as soon as you get beyond, I don't know, even 5, 8 people, you start to get to a point where you lose visibility. And we're in a world where we exist on hugely disjointed systems. And if we're lucky, we have systems doing bits of all of this. But in reality, we generally don't because it's a spreadsheet here and it's a spreadsheet there and it's a Word document here and everything else. And it's about how do we build this greater visibility and where we're going on to next around like the technology that people are using. We can go too far perhaps sometimes in terms of we get too much tech that's disjointed and then we think we're gaining visibility, but actually it just ends up diluting that visibility. So what we're going to touch on here is like what's going on. What technology are people using to try and manage this life cycle? And what we're going to do to start off with is we're going to run a very quick poll. So if you bear with me, I will pull up the poll. I need to probably stop sharing my screen for a second here and just pop the poll up. So uh, poll should be on screen now. What we're asking is how many bits of software does your firm use to manage that end-to-end client lifecycle? So really, this is every bit of tech that you've got going on in your firm at the moment. So from onboarding tools, what are you using for AML, what are you using for proposals, what are you using for pricing, how are you delivering the work, what cloud accounting tools are you using? What are you using for year-end compliance? What are you using for internal communications? What are you using for letters of engagement? And I'm looking at some of the results here, and you might have time to tweak it because I mean, if you even think about what you're using in the Microsoft Office suite or the Google suite, there's probably 3 or 4 there. So I'm a little surprised at the numbers that I'm seeing at the moment. Let's get everybody else voting here. We were about 66%, so I'm going to give everybody about 20 seconds to just respond here, and then we're going to share the answers. So another 10 seconds for anybody that hasn't done it yet. Any more for any more? And I'll end the poll and share the results. So 43% less than 6. Interesting. 36% 6 to 10, 7% 11 15, 7% 16 to 20. Thank you for doing that. What we're going to do now, if I just go back and reshare the slides, and bear with me, I've got to do various things just to do that again. While I find the slides here, guys, what's your thoughts on that, Rowan? Any surprises?
Yeah, it definitely looks a bit lower than I was expecting. As we'll see in a minute, sort of the results of our survey that we did, and this included like firms from around the globe, showed that firms were using a lot more tools to manage the whole client life cycle. And the UK actually came up, the highest out of all countries. I think possibly that's because of more onboarding complexities here than in other regions, but you can clearly see that there's a lot of tools that are being used, and we also found that as you grow your practice, you tend to be using more. So maybe that it's the firms that are on the call here are a bit smaller in size. Not sure on that, but yeah, it definitely seems lower compared to what we were expecting here. And there's probably around 40 UK firms that could contribute to that result that you're seeing on the screen there.
So just to clarify what we've got here then, so the overall picture is that of all the firms you surveyed across US, Australia, Canada, UK, and other locations that you're in, the overall view was it's 13.63 bits of technology that firms are using to manage that end-to-end life cycle, with the UK being highest at 15.81. And I mean, that's the average of all firms. When we start to break it down into firms based on headcount, because I'm assuming their employee numbers that
Yeah,
we've got
that's
we've
right.
got there. So your sole practitioner firms are using on average 9.4. Firms with 50 plus employees are using 18.13, so 18 pieces of technology. So what do we draw from this, guys? I mean, what's this telling us about the state of technology in our profession?
Yeah, I think that the volume itself is perhaps not the main issue, but typically the volume combined with lack of interconnectedness, that's where you get the problem. So even if the utilities of the application on their own are quite good, the lack of connectivity tends to give you these problems with disjointed systems, inconsistent data across them, so you're not sure what's true in each system, which contributes to sort of confusion around metrics that you might use for reporting, and information not being readily available to make good decisions.
Yeah. And certainly the challenges that I faced as I was going Farnell Clark was, as many firms do, it's like disjointed, incomplete data, like no one source of truth. I mean, most accounting firms have at least four sets of data. Um, so you've got something in practice management, you've got something in your compliance tools, you've got something in your billing systems, and then you might have a mailing database. So we've got four different sets of data. And the reality is, if we're completely honest, a client leaves and like we might take them out of the practice management solution. We might show them as a ZZ client, or we might do that in our compliance tool, but often it just gets forgotten and overlooked, and you end up with data that you just can't use. And we've done it before. We've kind of sent out NPS surveys, and if you've got a client that's left because they weren't very happy, then like you don't really want to be sending them an NPS survey, if they left you 6 months ago. So it's how do we do this? And the challenge, of course, is historically we've come from a place where our tools don't talk. Like we're so heavily dependent still on desktop legacy kind of compliance tools that it's really hard to get that interaction, and we end up just having to use lots of different bits of tech. I mean, what's driving a change here? I mean, we've got APIs and everything else, but how do we tackle that issue when we've still got legacy solutions? What are you guys seeing firms doing to overcome these challenges?
I think this
I
kind of
think they,
oh, go on then.
you
Yeah,
go. Well,
Go
they're
on, Dan, you.
still using the legacy. They're still using the legacy tools, right? But it's about sort of where your source of truth is. So and the reliability of those tools is becoming um, you know, less compared to tools that are online with real-time data that connects into other things. There's just more utility in one of those tools than a legacy tool. So you just have what you need to have in there and work to try and keep that up to date using probably manual processes right now because of the lack of interconnectivity, but because of the benefits of using cloud-based tools outweighs that. You can still run them along each side each other.
yeah.
And go on, Dan, what are you going to
I was,
say?
I was going to say, so that a lot of times where we've seen this is where firms may have, 10 to 20 different bits of kit that they're using, and all with the good intention, because at the beginning they thought, right, there's going to be this bit of kit that will do this for me, this bit will do this for me, but that whole integrated part of it wasn't necessarily fully considered. And so then, as you said before, like you end up having to pull out data into spreadsheets from multiple different places, which, we've spoken to multiple firms, even in the last couple of weeks, that, we asked them how long does it take to get sort of a report on where things are at, like a general report. And some people are taking, 2, 3 days. Some people say it takes them 6 weeks to pull reports out of all of their different systems. And so that's just slowing all of their operations down. And by the time they've got the data, it's outdated for one, and
Yep.
two, they're too slow to react to the change. So, or sorry, to the output that they've been presented with. And so it really starts to give visibility or impact on visibility at every single level in the firm, because all the gears are grinding really slowly. Um,
Yep.
so it's one thing to know, we see it all the time. There's tons of different softwares at Accountex, which is fantastic to see, and all the shows that there are out there now. But it is really key to make sure that if you're exploring softwares, always ask the question, what do you or can you integrate with other systems as a baseline? And if you can, what does the integration look like? And so the single source of truth is super key to understanding what solution you're going to use to run your firm. Because ultimately, unless you're using the workflow tools in CCH or in Iris, for example, which have certain limitations and things like that, some parts of them are good. Unless you know where you want to run your firm from, then you need to, oh, sorry, in order to know where you run your firm from, you need to work out where that data is going to be stored and being pulled in and out from. So things like Karbon or other practice management solutions that do interconnect with other solutions give you that central source of truth. And as Rowan mentioned, then you can dip into your accounts production system, go and do the work. You track everything within your practice management solution, so that becomes your hub. And then you have all the other ancillary systems dipping in, such as Ignition or other tools like that. So it really has to change the you have to change the perception of where is your data and where is it that I need to manage my firm from? Is it in my account production software, which largely is not going to be suitable, or is it in a practice management solution where it's designed to help you grow operationally and to strip down those barriers to understand the data that's going on in your business, basically?
Yeah. It's almost we have to start at the other end, don't we, in terms
Right.
of what the outcomes we're trying to achieve.
Mhm.
Like I would say, if you could rebuild your firm today with a blank sheet of paper, what would it look like? And you would almost instinctively start with what is it we want to deliver in terms of the outputs, the NPS scores we want to deliver, the experiences we want to deliver to clients, and then work back in terms of what needs to happen. Like what are the systems we need? What are the structures that we need to enable that to happen? And so often we're caught in this legacy trap that we struggle to get out of, and sometimes we need to kind of step out and look in and say, well, does this make any sense?
Mm.
So last question on this before we kind of move on. Um, we've gone from a world where accountants used to use best of breed. We went into the world of integrated suite. And what we've seen probably over the last 10 years is a move back to best of breed. So cloud adoptions enabled that. So before, when I set my firm up, we used Iris practice management because we used Iris for accounts and tax. But we soon realized that it didn't do what we wanted to do for what we wanted to deliver as a firm. So we went and tried to build our own practice management solution um, because we said we kind of want best of breed for these bits. So perhaps a slightly challenging situation question given where you sit within Karbon. But I mean, like my sense is that Karbon is the play here is we're best of breed. And actually, we will give you the ability to plug in the things that other players can do better. Is that still fair, or do you see that you're broadening your reach in terms of some of the ancillaries around things like onboarding and everything else, and where does it sit
Yeah, it's
with
it's a
you?
great time to ask that question actually, because I think if you'd asked us that a year ago, like we were still plugging best of breed, and ultimately we do stand as that as a solution. We are the most connected practice management solution on the market, so we can connect with, I think there's over 55 native integrations currently, open APIs to connect to anything else that has an open API. However, that being said, with our development and our roadmap and what we've been releasing this year, is the ability to for firms to choose. So they can choose that if they want to use Karbon to do your letters of engagement, sorry, to do your letters of engagement, you can. If you want to then, track time in the system, bill your client, collect payment from Karbon, have that then syncing back to your general ledger, whether that's in Xero or QuickBooks, you can do all of that within Karbon. So there is an option for certain firms to consolidate a lot of tech into one platform here. But also then at the other end of the spectrum, where you have got firms that are very embedded with their existing tech stack, but they don't have anything to glue it all together, then we can act as that bridge. And so you can bring in Ignition and you can bring in an AML provider and things like that. So it's giving firms the flexibility to either use Karbon end to end, or you can use it to integrate with your current tech stack. But also, maybe if you're using 18 tools today, by integrating it into Karbon, you may reduce that down to 10, for example, which is still a massive win in terms of efficiency, right? It's less apps for your team to get onboarded with, it's less training for your new staff. And so yeah, it really does help to just make those wheels turn a bit smoother. But it does depend, Will, on what type of firm it is. If it's someone that doesn't have much tech at the moment, then we can do a lot of the work in Karbon for you today. If it is something you're using a massive tech stack for, we can look to consolidate a little bit more, but give you more connectedness. So it is kind of in that middle bracket.
Right, excellent. So we hear the term practice management all the time, and I mean I always get a little bit irritated, if I'm perfectly honest, when people talk about CRM as practice management or practice management as CRM, because for me they're like very different things. I mean, in CRM you have your prospects in. I don't want my prospects in my practice management solution really because it makes it a bit messy. Um, so what does practice management mean to people that are delivering practice management?
Sure. Yeah, we've kind of boiled it down into the sort of the three tiers, if you like, because you're spot on. There are different ways of thinking about it. There's different opinions on what it actually defines, and it is quite difficult to define as a subject. But if you look at what the core is of managing your practice, you'll see those four dots in the middle in the red part. So obviously at the back is understanding reporting and making sure that you know where you are sitting against many different metrics, whether it's how fast are we getting back to clients, how long are clients taking back to get back to us, or where are we getting stuck within our VAT process, where are the bottlenecks. So all the reporting that you need to manage that life cycle is really critical. But to manage the business, the team needs to be able to communicate. And we see tons of firms that have, they're communicating internally via emails, which can get lost in the ether, and actually with lots of threads and forwarding and so on and so forth. And then you've got other communication happening in Teams or in Slack, and so there's communication dotted everywhere. And so to try and if a client calls up today, and they speak to anybody in the business, ideally you want that client to have a really good experience no matter who they speak to. If that person doesn't know an answer for them, they have to then call them back, or we'll come back to you another time. So those tiny little interactions can really be minimized by having all of your communication stored through a practice management solution. So all communication about a client logged against a client record, so you can immediately find that. And you are right, Will, the CRM is again intrinsically linked to this because we can hold all your client data in the same system. But as long as you've got the core correct, i.e. you've got workflows automated ideally, managing emails to bring in documentation to those workflows, your team can collaborate across all of those, and then you can report at a basic level. That's kind of where we see the core. And that's always been the core four pillars of Karbon. The full practice management is then when you can bring in sort of, time and budget to Karbon, or to your practice management solution, sorry. Bringing in your DMS, so where you're bringing documents in from your clients, where are you storing that? How do you get e-signatures done from your clients across all of your work? And then later on, or beforehand, sorry, is looking at proposals and engagement. So all of that communication, that collaboration that you do with your clients is then also going to allow you to then have that full experience of what we determine as full practice management, basically. The expansion part is kind of areas that we're pushing into more as a business. How do we help firms to manage their HR function? Can we integrate with their HR system? And again, bringing more operational systems into one practice management solution. So it really defines itself as, having the core of what you need to do to run your business, but then not trying to run before you can walk, right? Get those bits, nailed down as best possible. Then you can bring in other elements of that client lifecycle, such as the, as I mentioned, collaboration with portals or e-sign and things like that, and running through billing and payments. So there's steps you can take, but you've got to get the core right first in order to build on that foundation.
Perfect. Thanks, Dan. I think are we coming to you now, Rowan? In terms of thinking about what does this look like in reality? So we've talked about client lifecycle, we've talked about the challenges of tech. But if we get the tech bit right and we get processes and we get data and everything else, what does that look like in reality?
Yeah, and I think so for each of those stages that Dan was just showing, there's different points where we will have a solution, and there's bits where we will integrate to enhance our solution. So one of the core challenges that we see regularly is the engagement onboarding to delivery process. How do we make that seamless? And there are typically firms that come to us and say we're using this tool for producing engagement letters. We then use this tool for getting them signed. We then request information separately, and we then put all that information in a spreadsheet for people to track work. And obviously that's all disjointed. That's what you're seeing at the bottom here in terms of a manual flow of data. What we see as a more connected solution, and one that we've recently developed and are enhancing right now, is our engagements. So you can now do engagements in Karbon. We also have engagement integrations that you can use. So you will do your engagement there, perhaps do some AML or KYC as part of that. And then when that's signed, you can automatically kick off working in Karbon. So reducing your likelihood of scope creep there. Then we have integrations for things that we don't do natively. So information collection, making sure that based on the services that are agreed, you just ask for the information that you need. That information gets validated to make sure that it's provided right, and then pushed through to the practice management system where that data gets held for users. Same with your AML and KYC. We have an integration partner there that can handle that, and we move the contact data, move the relevant work data between systems. That then gives you that client understanding that you need to do the work. We have our client portal that you can activate to allow clients to interact with you and collaborate on that work. And then that moves into, seamlessly providing the information that's needed for employees to know what needs to be done, when it needs to be done by, who's doing it. And that's the delivery side.
Excellent. Next one.
Work time and billing. I mean, this is one we've been working on for years now. In terms of we've always had the work. The work's always been a really core part of the platform. Time has been baked in. You can track time in Karbon if you are a time-based firm. Alternatively, you don't have to if you are a fixed fee business. Ultimately, when it comes to billing your clients, that is the sort of the final piece of the puzzle, right? And so I've been working to get that process as connected as possible, and through much research to understand really what firms are doing today, to actually get work in the system to maybe track time against it and to bill it can be extremely manual and encompass probably maybe this is kind of in a basic version, but we have seen other systems where other businesses where there's many more steps to get to this invoice and payment collection ultimately. And so, if you think of the impact that can have on your team, which is obviously then how much time they're going to be spending to do their work, to then raise an invoice, it gets passed around the team to get the invoice out to the client. Client is then being chased for payment. It takes time to get paid. That's ultimately the challenge that we've seen. So how can we make sure that firms are getting paid faster? With a solution like Karbon that allows you to do the work in the business, to monitor the work in progress in the firm, track your time within that system. That time can then be logged within Karbon. Ultimately, approvals for timesheets can all pass to the relevant people. Within the same system, you're then able to make your adjustments for writing on and writing off, as opposed to exporting that, going into a spreadsheet, becoming very manual. There's obviously error prone in there as well. So if you've got multiple people doing that kind of work and they're going back to other systems to check whether we should be writing on, writing off, there's tons of areas that the efficiency just ends up becoming very impacted in that regard. Ultimately, then, if you're able to then send those invoices from that same system and have that integrated with your Xero or with QuickBooks, that auto reconciliation just makes sure that as soon as something is paid, it's reconciled into Karbon. You can then report on all of your work in progress and where you're getting paid and who's keeping your payments from taking too long, shall we say. So it is really about giving you that step-by-step connected experience for your team to make sure that the clients have got a good experience to get invoices out and paid, and also your team can then focus their time on more pressing matters, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean we're talking about time and billing here, and I get that the majority of people on this call probably don't bill on time, which is I'm very pleased to hear. I work directly or indirectly with I don't know 50 or so firms at the moment at a fairly close level. And the common challenge that I see from firms that are delivering growth at the moment is around productivity. And for many years, I kind of argued that actually most small firms didn't really need to record time. And the reason I said that is because most of them would never do anything with it, and there is a cost to time recording. Even if you kind of have a standard £50 an hour charge out rate, I reckon a team of 10 people would cost you about 25 grand a year to record time. So if you're not using that data, don't spend the 25 grand. But actually, if you don't use the data, then the likelihood is you've got uncovered productivity challenges. And we reintroduced time recording in our business probably 2.5 years ago now, to the point at which I'm even recording my own time now, which I never thought would happen. And it's slightly empowering as well. It's kind of a bit weird, but like we need to understand what's going on. And the point here is that we need systems that can easily surface the data, because otherwise, if it's a manual process, as we see here, reporting on what's been recorded, what's been billed, what's the variances, you're just not going to do it. And you're going to let stuff slip, and GP margins are going to be impacted and everything else. So it's really, really important that you use the data that we have at our fingertips to make the right decisions around what you're doing in your business. Anything specifically on here, guys, that you want to draw out?
I just echo what you said. I mean, the amount of firms that we speak to that do not track time, but are really showing an interest in tracking time is increasing by the day. So, we are able in Karbon to store budgets against all of your work. So to get, as we got on screen here, reporting on not just realization, but understanding profitability at a client level, or, which employees are spending the right time in the right areas, who's spending too much time with certain clients. Even if you're fixed fee, that information is really valuable.
Yes.
So it's really about having as much data in one system as possible so that the reports then can easily be generated. And as opposed to, again, you could get this data, as Will said, but you would be pulling it from multiple places, pivot tables, so on and so forth. So why not make it easy and have it in one place to then have one report that pops at the end, which you can filter down by looking at it by a particular client, or look at it by a particular employee or type of work that you're doing. So really having that reporting, what do you need to report on to make your business grow faster? Again, working backwards into what data do I need in what systems is really kind of key.
And AI is going to help this process, isn't it? Because if we're working within a platform like Karbon, Karbon knows what we're doing. So Karbon should be able to get to the point where it's going to auto-populate our timesheets for us. So actually, the time burden of recording your own time becomes easier, because you probably know whether we've been in zero and stuff as well. So it's like we're going to get to a point, aren't we, where AI is going to make that even more efficient.
Yeah, I think definitely that's an option. And I think at the moment, I mean, we've got tools which is basically tracking, let's say that you're in Karbon and you're, going completing a VAT return, for example, you're ticking off the tasks, you're spending time there. If you didn't track your time in there for whatever reason it was, you can go to your timesheet. There is a suggested time entries list. So it will just highlight where you've been in Karbon, what accounts or what contacts you've been collaborating with, what team members you've been doing things with, and it will suggest to say, hey, look, you didn't track time against this. So there's really tons of ways where we can help you to make time entry not as laborious as it may seem, but actually depending on the way you like to track time, whether it's by using a timer, adding time manually at the end of the day, or using the suggested prompts, there's a way to bridge that gap between people not tracking time and people tracking time, basically.
Yep, perfect. We've got two areas still to cover, Ryan. So shall we jump over this one, because we're going to talk about measurement and stuff in a moment, aren't we? Is that okay?
Yep, no problem.
Yep. So the whole point here is that with whatever we do, we've got to think about measurement. How do we measure what we're doing? And it comes back to that idea. You start with your blank sheet of paper. What are the outcomes you're trying to achieve? Because we need to be clear on what it is we want to be measuring. And I think so many times I talk to firms and they're not actually sure. Like, you start talking about KPIs and like, what KPIs should I measure? And that largely depends on what's your objective? Like, what's the message? What have you told your clients you're going to do for them? If you've told them that you're going to respond to them within 24 hours, then how do we measure whether you respond to them in 24 hours? If you're going to turn their year-end accounts around within 3 months of year end, how do we measure that? So, guys, what do we got here?
Yeah, I'll pass it on to Rowan, because I think he's been.
Yeah, so this is more around like the sort of the delivery internal metrics that you might want to track. Karbon gives you lots of options to be able to use your own measures. Some of the things that we'll be able to do is like, is work getting completed on time? How quickly are we getting back to our clients? How quickly are they getting back to us as well? How long is it taking work to progress through different stages? So you can effectively use them the way that you want to, but those would be kind of your internal delivery metrics around how work is actually getting delivered and what the client is getting in terms of on-time delivery or responsiveness.
Yeah. And I mean, client satisfaction, I talk about NPS quite a lot. We used to do NPS on a what I'd call as on a relationship basis. So on a calendar period. So whether that be 6 months, 12 months, whatever, we would send an NPS survey to our clients. One of the things that we've done recently is we've now moved to what we refer to as transactional NPS. So when we complete a job, Karbon is automatically triggering an NPS survey to our client, and we're using Survey Sparrow here, which integrates into Karbon to enable us to capture like what do clients actually think of what we're doing. Using NPS, which is a global metric, I regularly tell firms to do NPS. I wanted to do it many years ago, and I was too scared to do it because I didn't want to know the result. I did, but I didn't. When we actually started to do it about 5 years ago, we got a really good score. But actually, because I'd not done it when I was concerned I'd get a rubbish score, I couldn't see kind of like what progress we'd made as a business. And your clients' NPS feedback will always be better than you think it's going to be. So it's like just do it. It's one of those things that we really should be measuring. Clients care about what we deliver for them. Yet we focus too much on the inputs and not the outputs, not the outcomes of what we do. Um, Anything specific you want to say on this, Dan, Rowan?
This is about, again, the interconnectedness of products. Like we're using specific tools that are really good at delivering those things,
Yeah,
and then surfacing the information back to the relevant people. So like the person that was managing that piece of work, the client manager, so that they can see without actually needing to access the tool itself.
yeah. And this is that ongoing review bit of the client life cycle. Like we need to know what our clients think of us because if we want to retain them, we need to make sure that they're scoring nines and tens on NPS survey. So this is the whole point of this session is like let's break down every bit of that life cycle and focus on where we can measure what we're delivering to make sure that we don't need to fine tune to make it even better. And obviously the other key bit here is that we've got to be measuring our financial performance and our productivity. And as I mentioned earlier, the single biggest challenge I'm seeing with growing firms at the moment is maintaining GP margin, because it just gets harder as your business gets bigger to measure what people are doing. That's what we got here.
Karbon gives you a range of different financial metrics. So we can measure WIP, we can look at recovery, we can look at colleague utilization or utilization in different roles or different teams of people. So we allow you to cut the data in lots of different ways. And all of this is surfaceable in kind of real-time reports effectively.
Yeah.
I think that one of the key things here, though, is to also kind of once you've decided those things you're measuring, you need to like make this visible to your team, and then for effective improvements in it, maybe base their performance reviews around those metrics as well, so they're geared to look at them themselves rather than you just feeding them at some point.
Yeah. Perfect.
Wait,
Um,
oh, sorry, Will.
Go on, Dan, go on.
Going to say like the where we've got tons of firms using these reports, it's a key. Like obviously they're looking at performance over time periods against various different metrics, but it's not just looking at the data and saying great that we're doing really well here. It's actually trying to understand kind of where can we improve over maybe this time last year, and where have things got better and where have things maybe slipped a little bit. So this directly links back to then that whole sort of process of what is feeding this report. Is it the workflows about this particular work? Is it how long we took to get the information back from the client? So all of these metrics that you can get from the data is then looking at how can we improve process for the next wave of clients or for the existing clients that we're going to do work for next month. So it
Yeah.
constantly allows you to have that loop of understanding the data, go back to edit how we do things, make things better, speak to the team, and so that feedback loop really just helps to boost that performance over time.
Yeah. Great. We've got 10 minutes left. So if anybody's got any questions, do pop them in the Q&A box or the chat box so we can pick those up. What we're going to finish off on is really just at the whole topic of AI. We know AI is here. It's not coming. It's here already. We're utilizing it. We're using it. What impact is it really going to have? And I've said to many firms, look, there's no expectation that as small firms we're going to go out and we're going to spend a load of money building AI tools. We are completely dependent on our software partners building the AI that's going to help us work better and work smarter. And I regularly talk about the adoption of cloud accounting and automation, which is still like tiny. It's still like 20-25% adoption. So we've had 15 years for firms to adopt basic automation like bank feeds. Xero's own data says only 40% are using bank feeds. So let's not get concerned that everyone's going to start using AI tomorrow and our world is going to change. But the opportunity is here for us to use AI to do things better, smarter, deliver better experiences for our clients. That's where we need to be focusing our effort. So what are you doing in terms of Karbon? Because this is going to give us an indication of where AI is going to go, particularly like everyone talks about ChatGPT, but the real power is in agentic AI, isn't it? So
Absolutely, yeah. So
what
we've got various different ways that we're looking to utilize AI. Firstly, AI is a massive part of our strategy, and we have a team of people that are developing product around this area. One of the areas that we look at is within your workflow in Karbon. Typically, or historically, Karbon's not been the place where you do the work. You go and do the work somewhere else. But now with these AI agents that we have the ability to integrate directly into those pieces of software that you use, pull relevant data back, make it surfaceable in your practice management tool. So you'll be able to pull and push data from within your practice management to those tools. That might be a general ledger, it might be some other tools that you use.
Okay. Next one.
Communication's been kind of the main area that we focused on with AI to begin with, and we started rolling out AI products in the communication space probably, I think 18 months ago, maybe a little bit longer now. So there's a slide next which we'll come on to, but in terms of kind of the communication that you have with your clients daily and the meetings that you have, there's tons of meeting note takers out there. Ones that can then take it a step further for you, such as Vinyl, for example, allows the data collected within that meeting to become actionable and logged automatically against the relevant client record. So within Karbon, you do have all of your contact records in the system. So it'll be all communication about that person. And you can see that it's all linked to the relevant jobs if it needed to be, all the action items, key discussion points. So there are, as I mentioned, tons of tools out there for note taking, but ones that are focused on the accounting industry are going to give you that edge to make sure that the data that you're getting from those tools is really smart and actionable and measurable moving forward, to make those client interactions as useful for you moving forward. This is embedded in Karbon, what you're looking at on screen. So I'll go back to the example I said before, right? If a client rings you up today and speaks to anybody within your business, what experience does that client have? With a tool like Karbon, you are able to find the client record because you have emails and communication running through Karbon, whether that's internal messaging or whether that's emails coming in from the client. All of that can be stored on the timeline of the business, of the contact. Now, the AI will summarize all that data for you. If you're running invoices through Karbon, you'll be able to see what's unbilled, and then ultimately looking at an overarching view on what's been happening with that client. So whoever is speaking to that person can give them a very good experience, understand how urgent this might be, and act accordingly. So communication, surfacing that information so you have the data immediately without needing to ask around the office, pull data from left, right, and center, will just be there right in front of you to understand how to serve that client in the best way.
Excellent. This one's really interesting. So most firms I talk to really struggle with pricing. So what are we doing given all the data you've got? What's happening with that with pricing, guys?
Yeah, so this is our renewal for the engagement. If you've been working with your client, we understand what work has been going on, how much time has been spent against that, what the original fee was, and then we're going to use AI then to surface recommendations to you that this should be increased in price, for example, to help you manage the scope creep, for example, that you might have with clients. This is making it a whole lot more efficient because pulling all of this data together to try and get to this decision, we know is a time-consuming process. You alluded to that earlier, Will, that you said the renewal process was not something that you'd got on top of very easily.
Yeah. Yeah. So and using the data that you guys have got around kind of benchmarking fees and various other things. I mean, this is really quite exciting in terms of where this will go. So just a few kind of examples there of where AI is likely to have an impact on the way we work with clients and the way that we can use technology to enhance client experience, create more time, free up capacity for us to focus on what I always talk about as a human intelligence here. Like we're all focused on artificial intelligence, but let's not forget this kind of human intelligence bit, which is the bit that clients are going to value as AI delivers more of the things that historically we've charged clients to do. So I always like to try and summarize some of the key points of what we've talked about here. So in terms of key takeaways, things to think about. First of all, this was all about client lifecycle. Think about every step that your client goes through in terms of their interactions with you as a firm. Break them down into components and say, where can we enhance each element of that component in terms of whether we can do stuff more efficiently, more effectively, we can deliver better experiences. Be really clear on the things that you want to measure. And then think about, well, what technology have we got that can facilitate driving improvements to those things that we want to be measuring? Look for opportunities to automate as much as possible. So again, when you break down the life cycle, look at each component and say, where can we add automation to this without diluting the human experience that the client gets? This should all be about accentuating those human interactions by automating the stuff that the robots are going to do for us anyway. Focus on client experience at all points of the life cycle. So what are the little tweaks you can make at each point to deliver better experiences for those clients? And as we see more developments with AI, where can you supercharge each of those components by utilizing AI effectively to support you in the delivery of the things that you do? So that's what you need to do. In terms of if you'd like to chat to Dan around how Karbon could help you in your firm, there's a QR code there. We will circulate the recording, the slides, and contact details after the session. So hopefully later on this afternoon you'll get that. All there is for me to say is a big thank you to Rowan and Dan for coming and joining the session today. Thank you to all of you for taking time out of your busy days to come and listen. I hope it's been useful. If you have any questions at all, do either quickly pop them in now. We've got 2 minutes. Failing that, reach out to us via these channels, LinkedIn, wherever you want to go. And do get in touch. It's an exciting time to be an accountant right now. AI is going to create lots of opportunities for us to get closer to our clients. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Rowan and Dan. Great to have you on. And we will see everybody again very soon. Thanks ever so much, everyone. Take care. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, bye.